Justin Jefferson just continues to break records. It feels so good. I mean, the Vikings might be 7-8 right now, and we might not have had a winning record this entire season, and gonna maybe make a playoff run and be an easy out, end up with a bad draft pick once more. But it just feels good to see that we have a future. We have a future. We just have to fix this coaching staff, maybe look to a new quarterback, but we have a future. All we have to do is make Justin Jefferson the focal point of this offense. Justin Jefferson broke OBJ's record for the most receiving yards in first 2 seasons in the NFL, and that's such a good record to break right there. 2 LSU receivers. He broke it while going up against OBJ with the Rams. Broke his record. Justin Jefferson so far this season has 97 receptions already, 1,451 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. He averages 96.7 yards per game. So just a ridiculous year from Justin Jefferson, and he is the future for this team, and hopefully he can be ours for the next decade. Now, I say he's the future for this team. We cannot confirm that because the problem is the fact that we are a run-heavy team. Now, the Vikings might pass over 50% of their plays. They might pass more than they run because they're usually forced to pass. That aside, the Vikings have to pass more. And you saw this in the Rams game, how good the offense looked, how much better we looked in the fourth quarter than we did in the entire first half because the Vikings were a pass-first team. They were a pass-heavy team. They weren't run on first down. You're at 2nd and 6. Let's run again for a no gain. Oh, I have a good idea. Screen pass, throw short of the sticks, and now we have to punt it away. That was the entire story of the first half for this Vikings team against the Rams. Fourth quarter, you rewatch that fourth quarter because that was a beautiful fourth quarter by this Vikings team. They might not have won this game, but our team looked well. Like I said multiple times, the Vikings are a top 5 offense in the NFL and the youngest offense in the NFL. Our entire offense is on the rookie contract, other than Adam Thielen, Brian O'Neill, Dalvin Cook. Oh yeah, Dalvin Cook's on his massive oh, and Kirk Cousins, obviously. So only 4 of our 11 starters on offense are not on the rookie contract. The other 7 starters are on the rookie contract, and we are a top 5 offense. That's ridiculous. That just comes to show how good we can be in the future. All these guys are so young on the starting offense. We only have 4 guys who are not on the rookie contract. That's unstoppable. And that's a Vikings offense with Justin Jefferson, Tyler Conklin, KJ Osborne. We have our offensive line who isn't looking great right now, but still a very solid team by this Vikings team. And I want to see this going forward where we make Justin Jefferson the focal point of our offense and he stays with our team, stays in purple and gold, and we win games. That is the future for this team. And it all starts with one thing. Repeat after me, fire Mike Zimmer. Fire Clint Kubiak. That is where it starts right there. Because if the Vikings make Justin Jefferson the focal point of their offense, they pass on over 70% of their plays. Vikings are not going to be a 7-8 team. It is just that simple. It is that simple. Now, I'm tired of hearing Mike Zimmer in his press conferences. Every time I watch Mike Zimmer in his press conferences, I'm just hoping it's his last one. Every time I watch him in his press conferences, he says, oh, are you guys just... He gets asked a question about why the Vikings aren't throwing it to Justin Jefferson or why they're running screen passes on 3rd down. Or you guys don't understand football. You guys... Come on, 68-year-old, whatever you are, Mike Zimmer. We understand you know football more than us. We understand you've been around the league long enough to understand, especially defenses, a lot more than 99% of the people listening to his press conferences. That aside, it doesn't take a genius to know that running the ball 1st, 2nd, 3rd down and punching it away is not a good idea. It doesn't take a genius to understand that, Mike Zimmer, and that's why it just continues to annoy me. And every time I watch his press conference, I am hoping that it is last. So we hope this isn't the only record that Justin Jefferson breaks this season, and it already hasn't been, but we hope it's not the last he breaks this season. As coming forward, Randy Moss' single-season record with the Minnesota Vikings is 1,632 receiving yards set by Randy Moss in 2003 with the Vikings. Best Vikings receiver to ever do it, and the best receiver of all time. Randy Moss, Minnesota Vikings. He is on track to break Randy Moss's record, and I would love to see that happen. He already broke his franchise record last year and is set to break his franchise record this year as well. He just does everything right. And that's why the Minnesota Vikings have to make him the focal point of this offense. Now, you can say Dalvin Cook's the best player in this offense, and I agree. Dalvin Cook might be the best player in this offense when you're looking at what he's able to do. And obviously the running back position is more valuable than the wide receiver position. receivers get paid more, but running back position also, they just get the ball more, or they touch the ball more, especially in this Vikings offense. That aside, we can't just dismiss the fact that Dalvin Cook is a running back. That Dalvin Cook is a running back. That means that he's injury prone. He gets injured every year. He has yet to play a full season in the NFL, and running backs don't last very long. Dalvin Cook can go out with an injury this next season, or go into this next season and not look at all like the Dalvin Cook that we used to see. Why? Because that's what we see with running backs. 3 years ago, the top running back in the league was Todd Gurley. Yeah, that just comes to show how much the running back position changes over the years and how quick players can fall off. We see this with Saquon Barkley right now, and you hate to see it. It has to do with injuries. Same goes for Christian McCaffrey. You hate to see it. And we have to expect, or not expect, we have to plan for the same thing to happen to Dalvin Cook. That is making Justin Jefferson the focal point of your offense, because Jefferson is not a running back. He's not going to fall apart like Dalvin Cook will. We have to plan like he will. I don't want to speak that into existence. I want to say we have to plan for him to fall apart. Another name that comes to mind is Le'Veon Bell. If you guys remember when Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown were with the Steelers, how great they were. Talk about, that's a wide receiver that fell off, but that does not have to do with injuries and him being a running back. Overall, though, the Minnesota Vikings cannot rely on Dalvin Cook to play 16 games in a season, or I guess now 17 games in a season, because it just simply won't happen. I mean, he hasn't played a full season in the NFL, and the Vikings have to decide to make Justin Jefferson the focal point of their offense. And I think we can all agree that that is a great idea, and we can all say we are on board with that, because Justin Jefferson is elite, and we are seeing it this season, and we saw it last year, and we're going to continue to see it going forward, that Justin Jefferson is a top 3 receiver in the NFL. And we love to say that because we don't have a good history of first round wide receivers drafted. No, obviously, like Randy Moss. I mean, looking into previous 2000s, like our Vikings receivers in the first round were drafted, didn't live up to their draft pick. However, you look at the Vikings receivers drafted since the year 2000. We don't have a very good list right here. 2005, the Vikings drafted Troy Williamson, 7th overall. Easily the worst receiver drafted by the Vikings in history. Troy Williamson, drafted 7th overall, wasted draft pick in 2005 and was only in the league 5 years. 2009, the Vikings looked to get a new receiver after Troy Williamson was a god-awful draft pick, so they drafted Percy Harvin, 22nd overall pick. Now, Percy Harvin was one of my favorite players to ever watch play. Obviously, that was when I started becoming a big Vikings fan, so I was a big fan of him. Now, looking back at it, the older I get, the more I hate Percy Harvin. But again, not a good draft pick. Never lived up to his first overall or first round draft pick. I mean, didn't get very many targets because obviously we had Adrian Peterson on our team lighting up the fields. So we didn't pass very often. But again, Percy Harvin eventually asked for a trade, and it was traded to Seattle. So not a great draft pick right there as well. 2013, Vikings look to get a player who can replace Percy Harvin. They go with Cordarrelle Patterson, 29th overall. Cordarrelle Patterson snubbed from the Pro Bowl this year, by the way. Cordarrelle Patterson obviously worked in the kick return game, but he was not doing what the Vikings wanted him to do on offense, as he was not in the right position. Cordarrelle Patterson should have came into the league as a running back, and he would have had a better season or a better career with the Minnesota Vikings and whatever other team that he plays for. He's reviving his career with Atlanta, so I love to see him do that. And then 2016, the Vikings go with Laquan Treadwell. So yeah, pretty long history of bad first-round draft picks right here. And Laquan Treadwell, probably the worst receiver on this list. Now, Troy Williamson's the worst draft pick because you drafted 7th overall, but Treadwell's the worst receiver on this list after he has had an awful career. And I believe he plays with the Jaguars right now. He's still looking to revive his career, and I hope he does because I want to see him do better. Obviously overshadowed and taken over by Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen. So we didn't even need Treadwell to begin with, but 23rd overall draft pick, had a terrible few seasons with the Vikings and was cut after his 3rd season. 2020, the Vikings looked for a replacement for Stephon Diggs and now go with Justin Jefferson. So they're 1-4-5 on their receivers drafted in the first round since 2000. So Vikings, it looks like we finally got a real legitimate wide receiver on our team that we drafted in the first round. And you love to see it. Vikings have the best history of wide receivers ever. I mean, Randy Moss, Chris Carter, now Justin Jefferson. Hopefully Jefferson can continue to look like he is, and that is another Hall of Famer right there. And the Vikings have 3 of the best receivers of all time. I'm talking about if Justin Jefferson continues to play like he does the next 10 years with whoever he plays for, he would be one of the best receivers of all time. Now, we can't say that obviously because of injuries and everything that can happen, and players can just fall apart. But that aside, Minnesota Vikings looks like we finally got a serious player in Justin Jefferson. He should be the focal point of our offense, and we have to look to the future for this team. Obviously, it starts with Mike Zimmer, starts with Clint Kubiak. However, another player we have to mention, another person we have to mention here is Kirk Cousins, because yeah, it doesn't take a genius to realize that the chemistry between Kirk Cousins and Jefferson is just not great. It doesn't take a genius to realize that. Now, obviously, they don't say anything in press, or they don't say anything in the media to try to like ruin their friendship or ruin their relationship. But again, it just, you don't see it there. You don't feel it there. When I watch other teams play, when I watch the Cowboys play last night against Washington, you felt the chemistry. You felt how good Dak Prescott relationship is with his receivers. You just don't feel the same with Kirk Cousins. You just don't. And it sucks to see, because if the Vikings want, going forward, the Vikings have to look to a new quarterback. I mean, paying $45 million to quarterback Kirk Cousins in 2022, not what you want to do. Now, whether that's drafting a quarterback in this next draft, where they'll likely have to look in the first round and trade up, not a great spot where the Vikings want to trade up in the first round. But again, Vikings have to look to a future at the quarterback position. Maybe that's Mond. Maybe that's Mond, and we just don't know it yet. Mond doesn't have as great of an arm as Kirk Cousins, but that Mond that we saw at Texas A&M is still in there as a dual threat quarterback. So he can bring a whole different playbook with this Vikings team. I don't know how good that would be to have Mond starting at quarterback, though. Maybe that would, Jefferson would want to leave even more. Jefferson obviously doesn't want to leave. I mean, he's playing very great, but again, he would want to leave in the future, like we saw with Percy Harvin, like we saw with Stephon Diggs, like we saw with Randy Moss, like we saw with a lot of Vikings receivers. When they don't get targeted, they want to leave. It is just that simple, and that's what will happen with Justin Jefferson if they don't make him the focal point of this offense, and if the Vikings don't pass on over 70% of their plays. That's what I want to see. I want to see the Vikings pass at least 75% of snaps. Vikings going forward can finally, for once, live up to our expectations if they make Justin Jefferson the focal point of this offense. But congratulations on beating OBJ's record for the most receiving yards in first 2 seasons. And now going forward might beat Randy Moss's single season record for receiving yards with the Vikings. Love him on our team. Love Justin Jefferson. I also love Howie Roseman for drafting Jalen Reagor instead of Justin Jefferson. Thank you, Howie Roseman. Thank you, Philadelphia Eagles. I will be cheering against you, and I will always cheer against you, but I will thank you for that one draft pick that you guys did to try to help us out. Thank you. And that will wrap up this episode of Morning Kickoff.